Well, switching gears now, President Trump confirming that he had a phone call with Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro last week. Joining me now is General Jack Keane, Fox News senior strategic analyst. General, great to see you. Essentially, the bottom line of that phone call was, if you don't go, we're going to go in and get you out. There are historical precedents, both by Republican and Democratic presidents, of doing exactly that in Latin America, right?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I think we are at a stage here where certainly I think it's full disclosure now that President Trump does indeed want a regime change, and he certainly prefers Maduro to take his invitation to leave. And hopefully that is the answer. And the other thing with the military demonstration that's taken place in and around Venezuela, I think he's been attempting to put some significant pressure on the people that keep him in power, make them question, is this really worth it to keep Maduro in power? Maybe it makes more sense to tell him to get going. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Regime change for sure. There are precedents here, definitely. 1989, Noriega was deposed by President George H.W. Bush. No authorization from Congress, but some collaboration prior and during. And it was principally done for similar reasons. Noriega, in 1988, a year before the attack, the fact of the matter is he was found guilty and indicted in a U.S. federal court system for drug trafficking and human trafficking. And eventually, Bush ordered a regime change, and that was successfully done rather quickly by 20,000 plus troops supported by naval and air power. In 1994, President Clinton did much the same. Some collaboration with the Congress ahead of time, but no authorization. And in Haiti. And he ordered a regime change to take out the military coup that had deposed the elected leader, Aristide, in a democratic country. And he wanted him restored. And also they were dealing with mass migrations of tens of thousands of Haitians coming to the United States because of human abuses. And no authorization for that one either, but collaboration with the Congress. All situations are different, but this is the Western Hemisphere. Our presidents have had a tendency to pay close attention to who's running their countries here, and does that cause a problem for the United States of America? Yeah. And in these cases, as you indicated, the presidents acted because the United States was unduly being harmed by these two men who were in power, who are essentially criminals.
Absolutely.
And we have a similar situation with Maduro.
The question that I have, the big question, is Russia. If Maduro goes and is replaced by somebody like this lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize, who's pro-democratic, she's pro-free market, she's pro-Trump, for goodness sakes, if she replaces him, what does that mean to the Russian assets, not just Venezuela itself, but also the satellites, the ones who rely on Venezuelan oil, Cuba and Nicaragua in particular? I mean, they must realize that the sounding board they've had in places like Cuba and Nicaragua for 65 years in the case of Cuba, that would disappear. That would be a great loss for Russia, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the truth is, Maduro in Venezuela has three primary allies outside the region, Nicaragua and Cuba inside the region for sure. But it's Russia, it's China, and it's Iran. Not surprised. But for the most part, other than sending a Russian general in there to talk to Maduro and likely to prop him up, they're not doing much here. They're maintaining their silence, those allies. And when Iran was under the attack by Israel, the United States decisively supported it. No material aid whatsoever from China, and they certainly had the capacity to do it. No material assistance whatsoever from Russia, and they also had the capacity to do it. These people work together against the United States interests, and the threat is serious. But it's interesting when pressure is put on another country by the United States, how silent they have become. So, yeah, the Trump administration is looking at this as a strategic issue, not just Venezuela. It's fentanyl and narco trafficking, and the target is the United States and the American consumer, and mostly our young people. And he's taken a strategic, holistic approach to it. Maduro certainly is in the target zone. but it's also Mexico, it's also Colombia, it's also what Cuba and Nicaragua are doing to undermine the area. So a different focus than what we've had from previous presidents. And I said, David, I think the strategic approach is the right answer here.
Yeah, well, but the realignment of Latin America, I mean, without Cuba, if Cuba could finally breathe free after 65 years, if Nicaragua's had almost the same time. The guy running it now is the guy who started the revolution in '79. That's 46, 47 years. I mean, this could, and of course, Colombia is going to have a big change at the top. Petro, the leftist who's been causing us a lot of problem, he's going to be voted out soon. So this could be a major realignment of Latin America.
Yeah, and I think the president and the strategic team around him in foreign policy certainly understands all of that. And that is why they have been increasing the pressure here. Yeah. And certainly they would like these things to be done without having to use force. But obviously, force is going to be on the table, and the president will be presented options and the risk associated with all of these options.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we don't always know what the outcome will be, even though we know what the intention is, and other things develop as a result of that. But I'm confident our people have a grasp on what the situation is, what the options are, and what the risks are.
We only have less than a minute, but can you tell us as much as you know about where the Ukrainian peace deal is right now?
I think as a result of the Florida talks, which is between the United States and Ukraine, I think there's been some significant progress being made here. I think there's some more work to be done, to be sure. And I think going into Moscow, which Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff will do, if they're going to present some of the results of that, I'm assuming that knowing Putin, he's the only person here that's opposing peace, as we know, David. Certainly not the Ukrainians, certainly not the Ukrainian people, nor President Trump and his team. He's likely to reject it. And if that happens, we got to get prepared for what the day after the ultimate rejection is. Because if we're going to just continue to do the status quo that we're doing right now, I don't think that's the answer. Because that doesn't seem to persuade Putin to stop the war. I think what we need to do, significantly increase military pressure and significantly increase economic pressure.
Yeah. General Jack Keane, always a pleasure to see you, General. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.